Today's interview is with a guy named Paul Vedder. He is a co-founder and CEO of VXIT, an MSP out of Florida. And today's conversation was the kind of conversation that you'll have with me if you ever catch me, at dinner, at a conference or something, because we talked about business, but we really use business as a launching point to talk about personal growth. And, Paul opened up a lot about some of his own personal transformation in his own life and how it directly correlated with his success in his professional life. And I think it's a topic we should talk about way more often. I think it's existential to your business that you figure out what your personal limitations are and find ways to nudge those limitations broader and broader so that your life can become bigger and bigger. And as a result, your business can become more and more successful. So it's a great interview from a very successful MSP who's got a super clear path to the future. And I hope you get a lot out of it. Paul, dude, I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I said something on an episode where I was like, I want to get more MSPs, actual MSP owners on the podcast. And so you just sent me a DM.
I did. Yeah. It's kind of my calling card. I may have sent you a video message too. That's actually my calling card, is sending video messages to people. One of my core tenets of just me being a human is I think that other humans connect with other humans via storytelling and just sharing. And my life was changed that way. So somebody shared their story and it kind of changed the trajectory of my life about 10 years ago. I found the personal development world. So I like to share my story in hopes that somewhere along the conversation, somebody goes, oh my gosh, that's me. Or, oh my gosh, that totally resonates with how I could change my life or how I can make things better. So that's why I reached out.
I love it, man. You're right. You sent me a video, and this is actually the first thing I want to ask you about. So you sent me a video. I don't even see your face because it was like nighttime, and you were on a walk, and you were like, "Hey, I'm on a walk. I just ran this marathon yesterday, blah blah blah, and I'm walking this out anyway. Just wanted to." And then you gave me a compliment, which is like the secret sauce to getting anybody to like you is a genuine. If you actually have something to compliment them over. And then I voice memoed you back like the next morning. And here we are. We're buds. All of a sudden, it was literally that easy. So I wanted to ask you, video, is that a big part of your like personal networking sort of cadence? Is it a big part of your sales cadence? Is it both?
Both. Yeah. I love sending video messages, and I think it started when I sent my first one, and I don't know how or why I thought about it, but I reached out many years ago to somebody on Instagram. And actually it was because I was walking and I didn't want to type it, and it was so long, my message to them. So I just sent them just a video recording of myself saying what I wanted to say to them. And one of the problems with text messages, obviously, is the emotion gets lost. So, and I'm not necessarily the most articulate person. I would say in general, maybe, but in writing, it takes me a little bit to get my thoughts down on paper. So when I look at a blank canvas, it's just harder for me to type things out. So I'm like, I'm going to send this person a video message. She was like, oh my gosh, I love that you sent me a video message. And somehow I was like, wow, I should just do this more often. So it is kind of my calling card.
Dude, I have said there was this moment in the like 2021-ish timeline when it got branded the video sales letter, the VSL. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but people started basically using that term to sell tools like BombBomb or Vidyard or whatever, or even Loom. Like, hey, this is why you should buy our video thing that will integrate video into your outbound sequencing. And it is shocking how few people do it. But I agree. I like when somebody sends me a video of them, I'm like, oh, look, it's a person. And I'm going to give them 5 seconds. But if they send me this thing that's like synergy ? In an email subject line, I'm like, I'm not going to read this. It can't make it through my filter. I can't afford to care about every person who wants my attention, but I can afford the humanity to look at the first second of a video that somebody sent me that they actually made for me. And you just say their name so that, you make it a real video. I think anyway, it made sense. And here we are talking.
Yeah.
So
I think more people should do it.
more people should do it. But before we get into more of that tactical stuff, let's zoom out a little bit because I'm realizing nobody on this podcast maybe knows who you are. Talk to us. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about who you are. Give me this sort of super tight version because we're going to unpack it a lot more later. Who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name's Vedder. I'm the CEO and co-founder of VXIT. And VXIT was formed in 2014. And I kind of hesitate when I say the time frame because it was sometime between 2013 and 2015. And why that gets weird is because we were actually birthed out of another company. And at the time, there was this other company that existed. They needed an MSP. And the owner, instead of hiring an MSP, he goes, let me start an MSP. The interesting thing was he actually didn't know even how to spell MSP. He didn't know what he was starting or what he was doing. He was actually a friend of mine. I'd known him from middle school. And he called his cousin, who's my business partner as well. And he said, hey, why don't you move down? We'll be your first client and we'll start an IT company. I got involved in the mix, like I said, because I'd known the guy from middle school, and the three of us started VXIT. We started this anchor client, and we, Craig and myself, we serviced this company, and we just tried to make this thing work. So I came on board in 2015. Craig started around the 2013 mark. So that's why that timeline's a little weird. So we've been in business since then. We've grown. We service about 65 different companies across a dozen states, across about a dozen industries. And we just finished last year, 2025, just over 8 million in revenue. It's like 8.5 or something like that. So just to give you context of the size MSP that we're working in, we have just over 30 people total.
So 8 million in revenue out of 65 recurring clients.
Yeah.
That's a low client count for that dollar amount, which tells me that you're doing big accounts.
So we have one giant account. Yes, we do have one account, and it pains me to even say this out loud, but they're about 25% of our total revenue. The good news is that we have, and I'll back up. The reason they're our largest client now is because we met them when they were really small, and they are PE backed, so they started growing rapidly. We have been in talks with them. I even started when they started acquiring companies. I told them, I said, hey, at some point, it's going to make sense for you guys to bring stuff in-house, and we'll kind of peel away. We're finally now doing that with them. So my sales goal for this year, for 2026, is essentially to replace the MRR that equals that account, because it's a liability. And they know it's a liability. We know it's a liability. There's transparency. We talk about it. And I'm helping them build that runway because,
got it.
I may be biased, but I started as an in-house IT guy. So I've been in the industry for 20 years, but the latter half of that has been within an MSP. I believe that MSPs run some of the most efficient IT departments, quote unquote, ever. So if you just look at a corporate IT environment, and I'm probably, not making friends with this comment, but most of them, some of them are run very inefficiently. They're overstaffed. They just don't operate like we do because we are under a certain set of limitations, responsibilities, expectations that an internal IT department is not. When I was an internal IT guy, I sat around and played a lot of ping pong, I'll be honest. Right. And we just kind of waited for things to break. That's not the MSP world.
Right. Well, and frankly, I don't think actually most people would disagree except for the IT directors who are feeling threatened. But
the IT manager subreddit.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I don't think IT people are overpaid, but I do think it's fair to say that they're oftentimes overstaffed and then under-resourced.
Yes, I
companies
totally
want a human being because they understand a human being. They don't actually understand the build out that one person could get. And I'm not even talking about AI. I don't want to talk about AI. I'm just talking about systems and tools that person should be equipped with. But they also maybe not to disagree with that point, to compound that point, but also to defend the IT teams internally is internal IT teams. I feel like they have a lot more red tape and they're playing politics, and they have a different relationship with the decision makers than a contractor whose job is to be as succinct and punchy as possible, to be like, this is bad and wrong and you're not compliant and this is how I would fix it. Versus an IT director sometimes has to take 2 or 3 years of piecemealing to get them to sign off on the idea that that they've been working towards all along. Yeah. Have you seen that? Did you see that when you were internal IT, or do you think
100%? Yeah, no, I think that you're right. The other aspect is within an internal IT department, it's easy to feel busy. But what I have found is that internal IT departments, because the person at the top doesn't understand how we operate as an MSP, the metrics and the guiding light that drives the efficiency, they don't know the metrics to report back to the business, and the business doesn't know how to communicate back to them like, this is what we need out of you. So they just increase headcount. That's the answer, is throw another body at it, instead of understanding, okay, well, how many support people do we need per person that we're supporting? And then, how many network admins, how many, CIOs or directors or whatever. Us as MSPs have to do the math on that, because we're selling a service, and it's a 9 times out of 10, a per user or per device price. And we have to know those metrics, or else we will go out of business. So I had a conversation with an internal IT director. We're in a co-managed relationship of a huge nonprofit. And I was explaining that to him, like, you need to run your department almost like an MSP, like you're an internal MSP there. And here are the metrics that we use. And I love giving away the framework that we use. I love giving away metrics because I'm a believer that there is no secret sauce. Like, I think McDonald's was the one to call it the Big Mac sauce or their secret sauce or whatever. It's ketchup and mayonnaise and a little mustard with some onion and relish. Like, there are no secrets. I don't know if you saw the other day, but somebody decoded the recipe for Coca-Cola. They broke it down, and if that guy gets hit by a bus tomorrow, I won't be surprised. But because that's like that was the one guarded secret in a vault and stuff like that. But I love giving that framework away because we're all rowing in the same direction. We're human beings. Yeah. We're all in this fight together. Now, where things fail, so it's easy for somebody to give you a metric or give you the framework. Where things fail is people's inability to follow the framework and or deliver on the metrics. That's where things falls apart. So if you sit there and go, well, I've got the secret sauce in my MSP, you don't, because we're all using the same tools. They all do mostly the same thing. It's how you take those tools, wrap around process, and inject people. That, if you want to call it the secret sauce, that's the secret sauce.
Right. That's, dude, you're really
here.
You're really nailing it, because people, it's funny. Sometimes right before we hit record, I asked you like one thing. I was like, hey, is there anything I can't? And then you were like, nope, you can ask me anything you want. And I was like, well, no, I don't mean about you, about your business. You're like, no, I'll talk about anything. But sometimes I interview people and they're like, I don't want to give away that. Or in pre-interviews, there's just one guy, I'm like, man, he's so successful. He's super likable. I'm like, you could be the face of the managed service industry, but he's so protective over his process. He's also works for a Florida-based MSP, big MSP. And I'm like, man, you could be a brand in like 5 seconds if you got over this fear you have of people replicating you. Because guess what? Exactly how I sold managed services, I wrote the whole effing thing down in a book. I put it in 25,000 words and I sell it for $9.99 on Kindle. Audiobook coming out soon, by the way. But, of the hundreds of people who've bought it, how many of them are actually going to do more than 25% of it? 1%?
Right. So that's exactly, like, I always equate my success in my life to my fitness journey, because 10 years ago, I was overweight, very unhealthy, alcoholic. Like, I was struggling in life, and I refocused my life and chased the fitness. So 1% is actually right, because 1% of the population has a six-pack. And the reason, it's not because they don't know how to do it. It's because they're not willing to put in the work. It's a lot of work. And I always say, so I just turned 40 in December, and I know, some people are like, oh, that's young, or some people may say, oh, that's old. Whatever the case, what I've learned on 40 years of this earth, being on this earth, is that life, everything about life itself is very, very simple. That does not make it easy. I think life is very hard, but life is very, very simple. There's inputs, there's outputs, there's outcomes, there's expectations, and the path, the journey between those things are where people get lost. So you're right. You could give away. I mean, Alex Hormozi, that's his thing. Like, give away the framework. Nobody's going to do it. Like you can buy the books, you can read them even, but for you to actually implement them, that's where the hard work. It's Andy Frisella says, master the mundane. A couple of people that I look up to. Nobody is willing to master the mundane, show up and do the unsexy thing that they need to do day in and day out to run a successful company, run a profitable company, get a six pack, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, that's what it's built on.
I really love that you brought up your fitness journey, because I actually wanted to ask you a question about this. And here's the reason. Let me preface. The reason that I wanted to ask you about this is you sent me a video and you're on a walk wearing a weighted vest, recovering from a marathon. And that was the version of yourself. And maybe it was because you're like me and you're like, oh, if I don't do this right now, I'm going to forget about it. And you're like, while I'm thinking of it, I've got this captured moment. My brain is focused. I'm just going to reach out to this guy. But that was my first impression of you. Was that? And what that told me is, A, this guy's probably like me, where he's like, walking is the time that he can make some of those, like, and you had probably thought to yourself, I should reach out to that guy, probably for more than a week and probably more than one time. And then there was a chance where you're like, oh, right now I'm going to do that thing. But what that told me was that it's a significant enough part of your life that it was worth being the first impression of you. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, this guy wants to flex about being a runner. That wasn't the impression I got at all. The impression I got was like, this is a big enough part of your personality. But I want to ask you this, and maybe it's a can of worms and maybe it isn't, but what role, if any, has your physical health and your physical fitness played in your professional success?
It's 100% the most important thing.
Wow. More important than anything else.
More important than anything else, because it's an exercise and everything else I have to do. So, and it's funny, you were talking about, so I was on a walk, I did have a weighted vest, and I had just run a marathon. I think it was the day before, and I had to kind of walk out the lactic acid in my legs. And it absolutely was. I used that time to think. I used that time to do things like that, to reach out to people and LinkedIn and messages and stuff like that. So because I'm a father, I'm a business owner, that walk is just time that I can utilize. But it's 100% an exercise and everything else. So I just go stir crazy, or I just go insane if I don't get up on time, if I don't get my workout in. What I do is I wake up at 5, I do a cold plunge. I have a cold plunge at my house. I do some stretching. I do a pre-workout breakfast. While I sit there, I read a little bit, then I go work out, then I have a post-workout breakfast. By that time my kids are up, and my wife she homeschools our 2 daughters. So they're kind of getting their morning started. And then at some point in that morning, I'm off to the office. But if this morning, I went to bed late last night. We were having a family night last night. So we went to bed a little later last night. So I actually slept in a little bit. So I felt a little behind. But if I don't do those things first in the morning, I feel like I'm missing something. Or if I don't do them, I feel like I can't show up as the best version of myself, just because it's just an exercise and discipline. And again, that mastering the mundane. It's mundane to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, to do a cold plunge, to get my stretch in, to read, to work out. It's mundane. And I'll take it a step further. I think that it's something extremely important for men specifically. Important for women, absolutely. But men, if we don't master our bodies, we can't master our world around us. And that's what we're called to do as men. We are, that's just our natural calling in life.
Yeah.
So it's everything to me. I mean, that's the long answer.
I really, I want to, we're going to spend a lot of time on this. A couple things. First, I'll say that, let me say, I love everything you just said. And we're going to talk all about it. I want to throw in I don't know what word to use. It's not a caveat, but let me throw this into the listener. What I have found on topics like discipline or regimen or morning routine or even fitness in general is I have found with audiences, sometimes it's polarizing. And by polarizing, I mean, some people relate to it and some people, they just don't relate to this kind of thing. And I want to say this, that if you don't relate to some of the stuff that Paul and I are about to dig into, it doesn't that doesn't mean that you're wrong or we're even suggesting you're wrong. Because Paul and I probably, well, maybe it's unfair for me to lump us together already, but I would say about myself, I have a lot of limitations mentally. I'm neurodivergent. I've got a sneaking suspicion you've got a little bit of the ADHD jitters in you too. Right? Which means like neurodivergency means you're not normal. And that's okay, but that's what neurodivergent means. You are not normal, you're neurospicy. So there are things that we need in order to create balance that other people don't. They already have internal mechanisms to create that balance for themselves, or whatever. So like, I'm not a 5 a.m. workout guy. I actually find evening workouts to be so much more fulfilling and all that. Even though it's not that waking up early is a challenge for me. This is not the way that my circadian rhythm runs. Everything you're describing to me is like a 6 p.m., 7 p.m. workout is like life-giving.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, you don't have to go buy a cold plunge and go join LA Fitness and set your alarm for 2 a.m. in order to relate to any of the stuff we're about to talk about. And you can find whatever the balance is. For you, Paul, it sounds like you've got kids at home. You look like you're in an office. Do you ever work from your home?
Rarely, but every now and then. Yeah, every now and then.
Because you've got 2 kids homeschooling, a wife there. You've created a space in your life to create the balance that you need in order to achieve the success that you're driven towards. And everybody can contextualize those variables in their life in their own way. Is that a fair statement, you think?
Yeah, 100%. It's again, I always use this analogy. It's the put your mask on first on the airplane. When they tell you on the airplane, when, shit's about to go down, you put your own mask on first so that you can help others. For me, it's all of those things that I need to set goals, and I need to chase better marathon times and weightlifting. I weightlift and I run. So I have to do those things to keep myself sane. And that's my version of putting on my mask.
Yeah.
I would make an argument that for the most part, that's probably good for everybody. That is self-care for most people, like moving your body, eating healthy foods, because it sets you up for other success. But I totally agree with you 100% that people need to find their own version of it. Like, I don't like working out in the evening. It actually messes with my sleep. So, I also don't like getting up in the morning either, but I have found that, working out in the morning for me is better. But people absolutely have to find that version of that for them so that they can put their own mask on first in order to help others.
Yeah. But but the point you were making there about sort of understanding your own personal domain. You have an area. I heard a coach one time say this way, and forgive me if I've said this on a previous podcast, maybe it's a repeat, but you have 2 spheres that are relevant to your state of mind. You have your sphere of influence and your sphere of awareness. And where people get into problems and what is a leading cause of chronic anxiety is when your sphere of influence is your sphere of awareness is exponentially larger than your sphere of influence, right? Because we see the news where we say, this guy got murdered in this town that I've never been to, and it was gruesome, and here's the details, and here's what he looked like. Now, if you are giving focus and spending calories on things that are in your sphere of awareness at the expense of focusing on things in your sphere of influence, that is the recipe to create anxiety, because anxiety is fear of the future. That's what anxiety is. You're afraid of what is going to happen or what is kind of currently like the conditions around you and what they might lead to. When you're talking about, and you just use the word kind of calling, which I think is a fun word to use to describe it, is you went through some process 10 years ago, which we'll get into in a minute, where you decided you were going to put your focus inside of your sphere of influence, which starts with you. Like, you have control over your physical body, what you put into it, what you do to it, what you make it do for you. You've got control over those things. And interestingly, what we see happen in the coaching world is when people come in chronic kind of bitchers and complainers, they're really just victims, right? They're like, hey, the president is why I'm not happy. This is why I'm not happy. Taxes is why I'm not happy. the city is blah, the government is whatever, my market is shrinking, all these young kids are coming or whatever, and everything is wrong. And they list all these things over which they have zero control. And they explain that those are the variables that will determine their own state of happiness, which is essentially them saying, I'm giving my future to a bunch of strangers who don't know me and don't care about me. Right?
You could just end the podcast there. Yeah. That's perfect. So on my bathroom mirror, so for those that are chasing goals and want to have awareness of yourself, here's a little tip, and I'll probably throw these in throughout the podcast episode. Whiteboard markers work very, very well on windows and mirrors. So I have things written on my bathroom mirror, my current weight, my body fat percentage, my miles that I'm running that week. But I also, at the top, I have control the controllables. So if I have found, because I actually do suffer from anxiety, panic attacks, and things like that, when I control the controllables in my life, the anxiety is less. It's not gone. It's less and more manageable. So that's my version of controlling all of the controllables in my life.
Right. And so this is the outlet that your body, your brain, your soul, like little Paul, your inner child, needs somewhere to feel safe. And so what you've done is you've created those systems, and you're focusing on things that are within your control. And then what's interesting is that your sphere of influence grows when you nurture it.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you're CEO of a bigger company than you were before. And not because you changed things outside external factors. Your vote putting a different person in the office didn't make your business bigger. I use that as an example. I have zero desire to talk politics, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a visceral example that people get
totally
what I mean.
True. It's totally true. And there's actually this saying, I don't even know who said it, but like, if you look at a person who's just like obsessed with politics, you look at their personal life, it's usually a mess, because it goes back to that victim. They're just focused on everything they can't control. Yeah. And it's such a recipe for disaster and failure, because you can't do anything about it.
Right.
And it's going to destroy your life. How fair? That's not fair to yourself. That's not fair to your spouse, your partner, your kids. It's not fair to anybody around you.
Yeah. Can we talk about addiction for a minute? So I'm very public, like that I'm a like recovering addict. I've been an addict of many things. You mentioned that you were an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get into the gruesome nitty gritty here, but I'm curious. Let me say it this way, that there's a prayer in 12-step programs that even if you don't have to be an addict, you don't have to be spiritual or anything for this to be relevant, but it's this mantra that's called the Serenity Prayer. It says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Definitely. And
not only is it relevant for addicts, I think it's incredibly relevant for entrepreneurs.
Definitely. Because I mean, us type A's, us entrepreneurs, those with ADHD and all of the ideas floating in and around our head constantly, we're either addicts, all of us, or very close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I it's crazy, because I had been on a number of podcasts talking about my alcohol consumption for a long time. And I had always talked about when I was going to quit, because I knew it was a problem. And this is actually the first podcast where I actually finally made that decision. And I'm about 7 months sober, just under 7 months sober. And it was the best decision I've ever made. It was a very hard one.
Yeah.
It was a very easy one to make, but it was very hard for me to get there to actually make it.
Right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I've never met a human being who's not addicted to something.
Definitely.
Never a single
totally
one.
Agree. Yeah.
I've met, you can go to a monastic commune. They're still, you know what they're addicted to is they're addicted to serenity. It's still a compulsive pursuit, right? But I actually think we should talk about addiction way more in society, because we're all addicted to freaking everything. And capitalism is actually an addiction breeding machine that rewards indulgence, right?
Yep.
And I'm not even talking like ethics here. I'm just talking about like logic. Like look at compulsive behaviors that you can't avoid doing. And a lot of us are addicted to work, which I think which is super fetishized, right?
Yep.
Elon Musk is fetishized for his 18-hour workdays. You know what? You know why Elon Musk is where he is? Because there's a lot wrong with him.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I mean? This isn't political. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, but I did an episode called Good, Great, or the Best, where I said that anybody who is the best in the world at something is the best because there's something wrong with them.
Yes.
They're 100%. You cannot be the best and be balanced, because if you're balanced, then you're going to stop where you should. But you have to not stop where you should in order to actually be the best at anything. And there's this pursuit in entrepreneurialism where we fetishize like, hey, I'm going to get a partner who's codependent enough to indulge my compulsive work ethic, while feeling that their purpose is to sort of like be my pit crew to fill in the gaps because I'm living an imbalanced and unsustainable lifestyle. And that happens all the time, and people work longer and harder. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-work, but let me just say this. I've resisted talking about this in public yet, but dude, I've had plenty of 9:30 p.m. work days, and I was on Zoom for 6 hours yesterday, but dude, I built this entire business at my house in sweatpants.
Yeah.
I am currently wearing no socks or shoes, and I'm wearing Christmas pajama pants.
Love it.
Love it. And I've had, again, it's not that I don't work hard, but I'm like, yeah, this whole like, what is the new one? 996 thing? Work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. I'm like, it's not impressive that you're willing to self-flatulate in pursuit because you're afraid you're not enough. Like, it's not actually aspirational to me. It just shows that there's some things you should probably work out.
Yeah. Definitely.
I don't know.
Definitely.
Any thoughts on it?
So I agree with you. I think the caveat that I would say is that I think it depends on what outcome you're trying to produce. So if you want to be Elon Musk, you're going to have to work like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I actually just hung something, and this is like crazy aspirational for me, but I'm looking at it right now. It's a picture frame, and it's a fake Ferrari key, but it's a Ferrari key, and it's a black frame, and it just says "work harder." I have aspirations, and we can talk about this, but it's long story short is that I grew up we were poor. Like we didn't have a lot of money. I don't want to say we were poor, but we didn't have a lot of money to go around. There's not a lot of extra money. But because of my upbringing in that way, like we went to a food pantry to get food from time to time. Like that was a reality of how I was raised. So because of that, I have aspirations to change the trajectory of my family tree in that way. And that does mean making money. It is what it is. That's why I started a business. So, but that can't be your sole focus. My sole focus isn't to just make a shit ton of money. It's to help people. And I'm convinced that if I help enough people, the money, whatever that means, will follow. So, and I have that's just my outlook on life. Whether it's wrong, right, or indifferent, like, and how you feel about it, that's my
no, man. I think you're right on. I think you're right on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I feel the same way. I'm like, my goals are really big, and all of my goals need a ton of financing. And so I'm like, in order to achieve what I want to achieve, I need to make a ton of money. And I feel the same way for sure. Where I struggle, the reason that I think we can have this conversation is that when you have gone through the personal transformation work, when you've done the inner work that you are describing, you have a context, a backdrop that can help really sort of protect your perspective, for lack of a better term, protect your soul from those aspirations becoming poisonous to you, right? Definitely. Because there's another 100%. Version where you say, if I could just make a lot of money, then I would finally be enough.
Yes. That's a problem.
That's a problem. And the thing is that nobody who feels that would use those words. They would use words remarkably similar to the ones you just used. Yes. Because, that sort of sense of self it's a really key area. So anyway, I just think that it's a heroic pursuit to like look in the mirror and be like, oh, all of my best ideas got me every single problem that I have, and I have to do something about that. And then to set goals way higher. I agree. A lot of my personal heroes are like Tyler Perry is one of my absolute heroes. I think should be studied in American history. As a guy who, go ahead.
Sorry, have you flown out of Atlanta and saw his house from the airplane? Because you can absolutely do that. It's incredible, and you know it because he has a runway for his RC planes. And when I say RC planes, I'm not talking small RC planes. He has RC planes that are bigger than my truck. That he has a landing strip that he takes off from right in front of his house. So if you're ever flying out of Atlanta, look for a gigantic house with a runway in front of it. And that's Tyler Perry's house. So yeah, sorry. That was a little fun fact for you.
And he grew up so broke. He's a first generation billionaire. Yep. And this is the last thing I say about Tyler Perry, which I reference all the time. When he started, he was doing Medea shows, and he did not shut down the bootleggers because he knew that to get to his audience, he needed it to be bootlegged. So almost everybody who saw the Medea play saw a bootlegged video of it. Right.
I love that.
But he was selling out every show, but he was showing up dressing like the women at church and he was like, this is funny and this will work. Right.
Yeah.
Then Hollywood starts like kind of knocking on the door, but this is at a time where Hollywood is openly convinced that Black people won't watch movies and that Black leads nobody will see. And they're like, they basically are just like systemically racist towards the Black audience of America. And Tyler Perry's like, I will make a movie that only Black people will see and that every Black person will see. And he had to put up his own money for the first movie. But this is what I wanted to say.
Crazy.
He walked into every meeting with a dictionary under his arm. Because in his words, he was not like as educated in like corporate speak, but they were so pejorative to him. There was so much like opposition that people were talking down to him and they were trying to talk over his head. So when somebody would say a word he didn't know, he would hold up a finger, ask him to spell it. He would look up the word, and then he would get context for it. He would close the dictionary, say thank you, and he would continue the conversation.
Incredible. I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I love that.
And now he's besties with Oprah, and he's like one of the most successful entertainers of all time. And we shoot all the Marvel movies at the Tyler Perry studio in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about managed services. So you're doing $8 million. Can you give me the short answer? Because you came from an IT background, which is surprising to me. I would have thought you were a sales background.
I am an IT guy with a personality. My personality is that I like to talk to people. I love the technology piece of what we do, but I love solving problems from a strategic standpoint using technology. So my IT background, at least the first 10 years, was just very, very broad, but not very deep. And my ability to just connect with other people, go, hey, what problem are you having? My ability to hear that problem. And I always tell my employees that there's always a thing below the thing. So not every time, but a lot of times when people go, hey, this is my problem, XYZ, it's actually not XYZ. That may be something related or it's a symptom of the problem, but what's the thing below the thing? And we need to solve for that. So my ability to lead, talk, and manage in and around technology brought me to this point. It was not because I was the smartest person in the room. It's because I love to ask questions. I love to connect with humans and I love to solve problems.
So when you were building your sales motion then, like, did you get coached or did you work with were there any like key relationships that helped you figure out how to sell this? Because you've got 2 sales reps making $100,000 a day.
Yeah, we have 2 cold callers, making $100 a day. Well, and we have 3 people total. 2 of them are making $100 a day, and then one's my outside sales rep. So he's kind of going on appointments with me and stuff like that, but he's dialing as well. So, I mean, we're making 250-ish dials a day.
And did that come from your brain? Did that come from, were there any key books or key courses or key people that helped you?
Yes. So we are, and I'm sure, again, here's me making friends again. We're a True Method shop. So Gary Pica his framework for selling. We drank that Kool-Aid. So whether you agree with the True Methods framework or not, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I think the most important thing is just finding a framework that works for you and just following it. Like drink the Kool-Aid, whatever the Kool-Aid is, just drink the Kool-Aid and just follow that. Again, because it's success is found in showing up and doing the unsexy thing that most people are not willing to do. So to answer your question, I was coached through the True Methods framework. I actually think that because of our size and stuff like that, and hopefully my True Methods people aren't listening to this, but I think that we're starting to evolve. I think the industry is starting to evolve away from some of the nuances of True Methods. And I don't necessarily know how it scales, above 10 million into the $15 million MSP mark. I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't think that Gary is the end all be all, but he definitely inspired what we're doing here.
Sure.
I developed a friendship with him. And it wasn't just him, it was the industry. I'm a huge believer, or at least, again, I'm willing to not have to go through pain to learn lessons. I love to learn what works. I like to do my own version of it, but for the most part, I'll follow, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So we kind of figure out what works and just kind of go from there.
So you're willing to learn from other people's mistakes instead of yours?
100%. 100%. Now, I've made a ton of mistakes and I learn from them, but I love learning from other people's mistakes because I'll just, if they're like, hey, this works, I'll try it. And if it works, I'm just going to do it. And then, for the most part, you don't need to change it because it's working. And if it's not working, rewind, figure out where it broke down, and then go from there.
I love it, dude. Obviously you're making mistakes. Like if you're not making mistakes, it's because you're not doing anything. So perhaps, of course, you're going to make mistakes along the way. But there's one thing that's interesting to me is on your website, how little information is on your website. It's super tight. It's super clean. I love it, dude. You want to talk a little bit about the thinking behind, you've got a who we are tab, a what we do, a client portal tab, and then a cute little icon, which is like a support link.
Yeah.
And each one just has like a little bit of text and a call to action. And then you've got I'm looking at that. Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's a minimalist approach because we can't sell our solution, managed services, to a business without connecting with other human beings and finding out what pain they're experiencing. I talk to business owners weekly because we're cold calling them. And you know what? Sometimes they agree to an appointment. We're going on between 2 and 3 appointments a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. And these are people that agree, just us cold calling. Hey, can we connect? We have a different perspective on IT and how technology interacts with the business. Would you like to learn a thing or two? We'll share our experience. So I talk to business owners constantly, and me talking to business owners, I'm not talking at them. I'm just asking them questions. So I ask questions, which leads and expands into what issues they're having. And then it's very clear when I go, again, because when we first hop on the call, 9 times out of 10, people's like, oh yeah, we love our MSP, everything's great. Then I start to ask questions, and open-ended questions. Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current provider? If they say a 10, I have a question for that. Well, what makes them a 10? And that starts other conversation. If they say anything less than that, well, what pain are you experiencing? Then we start to dive into the pain. Well, they do this or they don't do that. I go, okay, well, and this is just, I'm shortening the conversation, but I find out how much they're spending. Most of the time people are open to telling me that. And I'm like, I don't care what people are charging you. Our prices aren't going to change based on what you're being charged. But what I need to know is, I've heard that you have pain.
Right.
Are you willing to invest, because usually we're more expensive, X number of dollars more in making that pain go away? And here's how our processes, our quote unquote secret sauce, hashtag secret sauce doesn't exist, would solve that pain. Is that worth, a potential furthering of this conversation? But you're not going to sell somebody IT services based on your website. Now, what I will say is your website would help solidify your branding and your marketing, because because the company that we were actually birthed out of, VXIT was birthed out of, was actually a marketing company. And my business partner at the time, he's no longer involved in VXIT anymore because we bought him out. But he was really good at branding. So our stuff for an IT company, fairly sexy, because I love when things look good. It's important to me that things look good. So we've got a cool logo, everything looks good. So I think that your website will help just kind of, it's like that final, not a final nail in the coffin, but it's a nail in the coffin of the whole conversation. Sure. But you have to have a conversation with somebody and find out what pain they're experiencing. And if they're not experiencing pain, we say, hey, can we stay in touch? Yeah, sure. What's the harm in that?
Right. I mean, obviously
it's the whole thing.
It's amazing. It's working. Like, I like it a lot. My first websites, like SEO people hate me because I'm like, how do we say this in way less words than it is now? And they're like, manage IT services for IT partnerships because of West Palm Beach IT services, West Palm, Florida. And we're good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to die because, okay, best case scenario, that gets one more person to look at your website and then they don't read it or don't understand it because it's written to trick Google. It's not written to convince humans of anything.
Also, human beings don't read. We don't read. So for them to hit a landing page of any kind or a website with a ton of text, they're not going to read it.
And on your What We Do page, not to get too into this here, but like You've got 3 tabs: strategy, security, and support. When you click each one, there is 1 paragraph of text on your entire page. Yeah. So they're a lot more likely to read the paragraph. They probably still won't read it all, right?
Totally.
Because there's nothing you can do to make them read all of it. But anyway, I just think it's cool that you guys are positioned differently.
I just like to break things down. I just like to break things down into simple. I'm all in on the word frameworks. I love the word frameworks because it gives you a guiding light on what you should do most of the time. If you're following a framework 80% of the time, so we run on EOS as well. So there's that saying that we want to do 80% of the things. So even if you're hitting 80% of what you set out to do, you are winning because most people aren't doing that. So all that to say, I love to take the complexity of IT. It's almost like when I was a kid, I don't know how old you are, but when I was a kid, there was a magician on TV. He would do a magic trick, but then show the secret of the magic trick. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this industry. I'm trying to put all of our secrets out on the table because I think that people within our industry, people guarding and making it secretive and, it's bullshit. And it doesn't work. There's so much information out there. And again, our industry is changing so quickly. That whole AI thing, the discussion that we are not going to have, but we have to change with that. Like people, the people that are in owning businesses now grew up with the technology that we now have. Things are changing, whether we like it or not. So probably another podcast episode.
Dude, I like the magician analogy. So first of all, physically right now, this is what's in my hand.
I love
deck of cards. It's because in 2020, that was my decision to what do I do with my hands while the world is maybe going to end, was I'm going to learn sleight of hand because I think sleight of hand is cool. So
I love it.
I started, now it's it's my fidget cube, right? Is I just play with it while I talk because that's one of the ways I keep myself focused. But anyway, there's so many MSPs who are going the David Copperfield route where they still want this bombastic spectacle. I'm going to make this Statue of Liberty disappear and I'm going to wear a cape and I'm going to dramatically, I'm going to do this voguing all the way along the way. And, that was great in the 80s when more was more, when Trump Towers was a real estate icon because he was made everything gold. That was built in that era when that was the thing, And then you've got so many MSPs going the David Blaine route, which is I'm going to immerse myself. My identity is going to be magic in a way that's very impressive and incredibly impossible to relate to.
Yeah.
Nobody is friends with David Blaine because he's living his act. His act is how he talks, how he does everything. He creeps you the hell out. And that's a part of, He's actually just doing very simple. Actually, if you know David Blaine's magic, he's like very classic moves. He's just the best in the world at them, doing them right in front of your face because he's been obsessively doing it 10 hours a day for 30 years. And then
the Michael Jordan of magic.
Yeah, right? Like now you're the Penn and Teller.
Yes.
Which is they're great at magic, but their whole shtick is making fun of how serious other magicians take magic.
Definitely.
Because it's this innately silly thing. And yet they're punctuating the actual desired effect of magic is not to trick people into thinking you're a warlock. It's to entertain them.
Yes. And to wow them with the actual craft of the sleight of hand or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I love that you made that connection. So fun fact, my grandfather and my dad, but my grandfather owned a circus growing up, the Vedder Brothers Circus. So my dad did clowning. I did clowning. My uncle's an entertainer. I know magic. I can ride a unicycle. I can ride a 6-foot unicycle. I can juggle. I'm not a very good juggler, but I have magic tricks and stuff like that. So I love that you made that magic connection because I love that stuff. I love it.
So great, dude. But I like that perspective a lot, that what you're saying is, hey, the effect of David Copperfield, the effect of a magic show is that you get entertained. And the effect of an IT service is that you help their business.
Yes.
And they actually don't care if you live and breathe it. They don't really, and they don't want it to be a show really as much anymore. They want the effect.
Yes.
And we're now living in this transparent world where entertainers are now like private concerts are the thing. And movie stars, we see what they ate for breakfast every day. So nobody watches the Oscars anymore because we already know everything about these people. And that's how we want to relate to our entertainers. I think this metaphor has legs because
totally.
IT support used to be this like, hey, if you showed up with glasses and a pocket protector, they were like, okay, whatever, dork, we'll pay you whatever you want because we don't really know what you're doing. And it was magical. Yes. And now there's this transparency in a way, but it's all unto the same desired effect of make everything work, and it better work right away. If a magician flashes a move or drops a card out of their hand, they have a zero margin for error. They're instantly written off for the rest of the show, and it pops the illusion, right? If you can't draw direct correlation to what you're doing and how it's helping them, it pops the illusion, and they go, we're not going to fund your R&D department where you dorks sit around and practice automating stuff. Right?
I love it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I tell my people constantly, like, people don't care about the technology piece of what we do. They don't care. Like, they don't care. And in fact, CEOs and executives care even less than the normal people in the company. Like, they don't care. They don't care. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it. Unfortunately, it's just the dichotomy of where we live. There's a comic online, and I think it was XKCD, but the IT or the boss comes into the CEO comes into the IT guy's office and he goes, everything's working. Why the F am I paying you? And then the next slide is, everything's broken. Why the F am I paying you? It's just like, we live in that dichotomy, and I understand that. And that part of what we do is very hard. But for you to sit there and beat a CEO over the head with technical details, they don't care. They don't care.
They never will. So you have to be able to relate to them and make them trust you through a different means, right? We've got a couple of minutes left. I want to do a little thought experiment with you.
Let's do it.
You're at 8 million. You told me when you sent me that video that you wanted to get to 15 by 2030 or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah. So we run on EOS, and as part of EOS, you set a goal, your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. And 2032 or 2031, so end of 2031, we want to be a $15 million MSP. That's kind of just what we set our sights on. Okay.
So being a consultant that you barely know, other than you at least bought my book. I don't know if you read it, but you listen to my podcast. Can we dig into what your plan is?
Yeah, for sure.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to get to 15 million?
So for the first 8 years or so of our business, we grew from just owner-led sales. So me networking, me just kind of being out there. About 2 years ago or so, and this may surprise people that don't have a sales engine or just starting, salespeople, that whole process takes a very long time. to spin up. So we're 2 years into building our sales engine. We have not got everything figured out. I think that we did a lot of work in 2025 that's going to help propel us through 2026. And what I'll say on that real quick is just the work that we did in 2025 is going to allow us to close what we want to close in 2026. That's how sales works. We're cold calling people. We're touching base. I'm out there networking. Almost nobody, very few people, when I meet them at first, go, "Oh my gosh, I'm looking for an MSP. Will you do my MSP? Or will you do my IT work?" Like, no, but that does not happen. It's, you need to build a relationship. You need to nurture this person. If you're cold outreaching, you need to put them in some sort of nurturing funnel. And then when things go south with their current provider, you're there. Hopefully, you're top of mind. It's a numbers game. So all that to say, we take where we're at right now. So 8 million, and I'm not going to have numbers in front of me. So the thought experiment might be a little surface level, but we just take where we're at with how many users we're supporting at the revenue. We go, okay, we'll multiply that out to what it would look like at 15 million. How many users is that with your average all-in seat price? And then you just extrapolate that out. Then that can help you build out your sales goal. Our sales goal this year is 60 grand in net new MRR. So that's what we're trying to close. And we know to do that, at a close rate of a little less than 10%, because that's about where you're going to land, you need to have X number of deals at the top of the pipeline, and you need to be working them in hopes to close one deal a month at an average size of $5,000 per client. That's kind of it. Business and all of this, it's just math. Now, you asked, what are we going to do to get there? So once you have the math, you need to figure out the activities that will get you there. So the activities that we're doing is we are cold calling. I've got an outside guy. I've got 2 inside people doing the cold calling. I'm leaning heavy into producing marketing content. So because I've got my salespeople kind of doing the hunting and doing some of the fishing for me, they're bringing me leads and deals to close and stuff like that. I don't have to hunt anymore. So I have people for that. So we're investing the money there. I'm leaning into producing content. And one of the things I want to encourage other people in our industry, I see a lot of people, and we're doing it now, we're producing content specific to our industry. What I'm doing is I'm producing content that has nothing to do with our industry. And that's a strong way to put it, but it has to do with business, not just IT. So I'm talking about process, and I've got this series called You're Doing It Wrong. So what I'm trying to highlight and expose is the intersection of business and IT, or how IT should be run. One of the things I want to do, taking Alex Hormozi's saying of give away, it's actually written on my wall here, give away the blueprint. I'm going to build out like a blueprint to hand, like a binder. Here's IT in a box, IT person or IT leader or CEO or whatever, in a very clear language. This is what an IT department looks like. This is the different pillars. And I've broken them down into 3 pillars. Again, like this easy, there's strategy, security, and support. And they're in that order for that reason. So anyways, I've kind of branched all over the place, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I love it, man. What do you see being the biggest, what's your biggest, if something were to go wrong that would derail the timeline of hitting the goal, what do you think is the most likely thing that would go wrong?
The thing that we're encountering right now is price pressure with the industry. So we have a deal that we're working on right now. I actually was just working on the RFP before I hopped on here with you, which I have a whole thing about, and I'm going to post it here in a couple of weeks, but RFPs are bullshit. But I was working on an RFP, and one of the interesting things is we're finding that these MSPs that are getting scooped up by large M&A firm, PE, all that stuff, it's just a race to the bottom. It's a commodity. They're chopping up what we're trying to do. So pricing is going to be interesting in the next 5 to 10 years because things are changing. And like I said, it's changing. It's changing. So pricing is going to be an interesting thing to kind of work through. But if you're a business and you know what your costs are, you know what you need to charge. It is what it is, but you need to go out to the market, and that has to be market tested. So pricing is going to be a struggle because we're coming in at our market. So we're in the South Florida market, retail price, $175 a user. That's kind of where we start. So the other thing is just again, like showing up and doing the activity. We are cold calling. Like I'm sure people have thoughts about cold calling, and some people just maybe like vampires in sunlight, like just totally opposed to it. If you go about it a certain way, it is successful. Cold calling absolutely does work.
Yeah.
So I think it's just continuing to do the activity and the volume of activity that needs to be done for there to be success. I think it's just a numbers game. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Yeah. I mean, I'm just, you're a guy, I want to take advantage of your transparency and your level of maturity as an MSP to sort of ask you some of these things on the record for those who are listening. Because there's going to be some who are 5 years ahead of you and some who are 8 years behind you who are listening to this podcast. And I think all of them are going to relate to those two concerns, like keeping up the velocity of activity over time, especially when it's contingent on employees. Like, what if you have like the whole thing is because you've got a dynamite unicorn cold caller who quits to get a SaaS job that pays them 3 times more and startup equity, and there's nothing you can do to compete with it. Well, now you're like, all right, well, now we set the timeline back 9 months to basically recreate that degree of efficiency. I will say this, I think True Methods is great. I don't know Gary, you should do an intro and I should get him on this podcast for sure. But I've worked with a lot of True Methods shops, and it's just like any other framework. There's a bunch of people who use it well and they get amazing results. Some of those are my favorite clients because I'll say it this way, my worst clients are the ones who they say they want to go fast. Well, no, there's that, but those people just don't make it. But they say they want to grow fast. We help them. They get 3 new clients, and then they're like, don't talk to me for 6 months because I'm buried onboarding these 3 clients. I'm like, what did you think was going to happen? You knew exactly what was going to happen here. And then they all just say like, oh yeah, I can onboard 60 clients tomorrow. I'm like, no, you effing can't. You can't. You don't even, you don't know anything. You don't know how to keep this running. So anyway, I like the clients, and what I like about True Methods clients, oftentimes I found, is that they've got processes. So like they can onboard and they can do it relatively consistently. So we could bring them a new client every 2 to 4 weeks and work successfully. Here's another thing I've said, and I'm going to make some waves too. Caveat, love Gary, love True Methods, all of that. Same with EOS. I also run on EOS. I think EOS's sales material is not helpful. I'll just say it that way. I think it's the least developed. I think Gino Wickman is an operations mastermind. I don't think sales is his area of genius. I think it's kind of 20-year-old advice to like make a list and work at it hard. And that's basically the end of the sales training and the traction, Gary's model is, for those of you who are listening might be saying, wow, my close rate's way higher than Paul's at 10%. First of all, it probably isn't pound for pound. If your closing rate is above 75%, it's because you have exclusively referrals and you're probably closing 2 to 5 opportunities a year.
Yes.
So we are not, this is not apples and oranges. This is apples and rocket ships. We're talking about a totally different thing, right?
Yeah.
The reason your closing rate is 10%, I'm going to wager to say, is because you're doing the FTA thing where the person's going, hey, this isn't a sales call. We want to be a resource for you. I want to get you on the phone with our CEO. He might be helpful. And this is a good person for you to know.
100%. 100%.
Right. So that's how True Methods does it. And so, hey, if you're under contract for 2 more years, no problem. We just want to be available. We want you to know we're in the community. So you're doing telemarketing, essentially, high level, early awareness. So this is super top of funnel. You're not just going for quote unquote qualified discovery calls where they're in a buying position. You're going for introductions where you get on their radar. And then the hope would be that then you will nurture that relationship over time to be ready. It's the mattress store appeal. Like they still pay a kid to spin a sign on the corner because you buy a mattress every 7 years and you're going to buy it from the last mattress store that you remember exists, which is the one that has the kid dressed up like a slice of pizza who's spinning a sign, right?
Totally. Yes.
So I have some thoughts. If I were your coach, I have some thoughts. I think we could double the closing rate. I think that's the cheapest way rather than doubling velocity. By the way, you're getting about 1 meeting per 400 to 500 dials.
Yes.
There you go. That's right in line with, shameless plug, right in line with what we talked about in the book. Some people tell me they get like a meeting a day and I'm like, I just don't super duper believe you. to be honest, most of those people are just lying, but also they don't hold or whatever. So
Yes.
anyway, I have some thoughts on how we could increase the efficacy of the meeting and probably increase the volume of the meetings over time, but just keep not stopping. And I don't see a world where Paul Vedder doesn't achieve all of his goals, because you have built this system for yourself. If you're not too bashful for a compliment, you've done the work, the inner work that most entrepreneurs are just not willing to do. But your business's ceiling is directly related to your personal capacity.
Yes.
As a human being.
100%.
And because you are committed to increasing your personal capacity as a human being, that's why I know that the ceiling for your business is going to keep rising. So, dude, I wish you just so much success. Is there any nugs, juicy nugs that we need to leave the audience with that we didn't cover yet that you want to leave them with?
That we didn't cover yet? No, I think that people need to, and again, I share my story because 8 to 10 years ago, I was not in a good place. I was using alcohol to numb out parts of my life. I'd get home and I'd, start drinking whiskey because my life was not great. Like I looked around, I was like, this is it. Like, and we were having success as a business. But I was like, this is it. Like, and I was also 60 pounds heavier, 55, 60 pounds heavier, and I just wasn't taking good care of myself. And I learned about the growth mindset and that I could change the things that I didn't like about my situation. And it was just me controlling the controllables. And the things that us human beings can control are what we put in our mouth for nutrition, how much we move our bodies. And from there, it equated to me starting to dive into the spiritual, the mental aspect of, how to be a better husband, a better father. All of that compounds into me being a better business leader, me being a better neighbor. And quite frankly, that's it. That's the world. You're not going to change what's happening in our political system. Like, sure, go out and vote and stuff like that, but don't worry about that stuff. Shrink your own worldview just a little bit, actually a lot. And it was funny, like we do as part of VXIT, like every other month we do something called VXIT Cares. And we go volunteer somewhere. One of the things that we actually started doing, we'd go like travel to a beach because we live in South Florida. So we'd go to a beach and do a beach cleanup. Recently, we've been focusing on our own home. So we went downstairs because we're on the 10th floor of a tall building. We went downstairs and picked up our parking lot. So all of that to say, the lesson there is get your own home in order. Like, for those of you, you may or may not be a fan of Jordan Peterson, but he says, just get up and make your bed. Like start small with the little things that you can control. So I want to encourage people to get their home, quote unquote, in order. And what that means is control what you're putting in your mouth, feed your body the right foods, move your body. Walks are fantastic for your body. Like you can just go out and walk, whatever that is for you. I think that will lead to a better version of yourself. You'll be able to be a better business leader. And I think that you'll see great success with that. So I think it's just reiterating the points that we already went over.
Yeah, I love it, dude. You brought a lot to this. I think we're above reproach on the question, was this a helpful episode? I think you've done a lot for the community. If anybody wants to talk to you further, are you open to that? And how do they get a hold of you?
Anytime. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message. I won't give out my cell phone here, but if you want, I'm happy to text people back and forth. I've spoken at the different exchange events at PAX 8, their event and whatnot. I've spoken about this exact topic because I'm just so passionate about it.
Yeah.
So definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. And if I can absolutely point people in the right direction, I'm not going to coach their entire life, but I can absolutely point them in the right direction as far as even fitness and nutrition goes. Because I have a coach. Like I'm paying somebody on a monthly basis to coach me through my goals because I am a marathon runner. I do lift weights and I check in with him every week. What gets measured gets managed. And I want to manage myself into the goals that I want to accomplish. And that's super important.
Yeah. I love it, man. I'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes. Thanks again for the time and everything you're doing in the channel. And we'll see you at the next thing.
My pleasure.